Hello, this is Jim Kaufman with Rankin Technical College. Today I wanted to go over kind of a little bit of a helper video for Lab 0502. So let's get started on that. So this is about really start getting into the React side of things for the issue tracker. And here I went ahead and already kind of did this, and I can just, you can do this yourself. I'm not going to demonstrate this, but just remove the index.css and app.css. You just need to make sure you go in your files. App.js is going to have have a link to this, and the main also. So you just need to go in there and make sure that you remove those references to the CSS files. All right, and then go ahead and for now, just go ahead and replace in your app. And here it says app.js. It's actually going to be your JSX, but go ahead and just go ahead and put this in there, and go ahead and install Bootstrap. And in your main.jsx file, go ahead and add this as well. As far as installing these other dependencies, they're not really needed at this point, but you can go ahead and install them anyway. They will be needed in the future. As far as screen mockups, this is optional for you. If you want to go ahead and use Balsamiq to create some mockups, you can do that. And if not, you can go ahead. We can go ahead and get started on implementing some components. So we're going to create a component directory, and inside component directory, we're going to create one. We're going to create a JSX file for each, basically each screen, login form, register form, etc. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started doing that. So I'm going to come in here under source directory. I'm going to add a new folder and call this components. All right. And then in there, I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. And let's call that, let's just do login.form. .jsx. Okay. And then in here, we probably could use the default for this. So I'm just using a arrow function for my login form, just returning it. I'm just doing a base one here for now. Okay. So let's go look at the requirements. Let's go look at the rubric for this and see what we need to have. So for login form, it contains the following elements: an email field, a password field, submit button, link to register screen, etc. Okay. Stores the state of all form fields within the component's use state. Call an event handler when the user successfully logs in. Okay. So before we do this, I guess the thing I want to kind of go over a little bit. So we're going to be using Bootstrap. We're going to be using a lot of HTML and that. So different options with that. Obviously you can write it yourself. You could within Visual Studio Code, you can go ahead and use Copilot. You can go ahead and find some templates out there. There's plenty of sites, Bootstrap templates you could use. And also, I did want to show you something else here. The company Vercel, that actually is the owner of the Next.js. Don't know if you've heard of that before, but it's a different framework. It's a different library that sits on top of React. And we're not actually going to be using that, but that's the company that is responsible for that is Vercel. And Vercel has this AI generative UI type creating thing that you could use. So first I went ahead and created an account here with Vercel. So you can just go to this URL. I'll send this in an email. Go to this URL, create an account. Okay. And what I did here, I'm just going to copy this one. Copy this. I'm going to go ahead and delete this because this is what I did. Okay. And we're starting from scratch here. Let's see what else I have. Let me just delete all of this, clean this up, start from scratch here. And I wrote a prompt. And this prompt, here, let me bring this up in a different editor real quick. Maybe I'll just bring it up in Word. So we're going to look at it a little better. Okay. So I'm doing this prompt within Vercel here, and create a pure Bootstrap version 5 site without Tailwind. And the reason I do this is because there's other technologies that it tends to want to incorporate into the code, and I'm just trying to keep it really basic for us. So, so I'm creating a Bootstrap version 5 site without Tailwind or TypeScript or other technologies, and only produce the HTML files. Okay. And then I kind of gave it some additional information about, this is a browser-based React JavaScript issue tracker app. The following screens will be needed. And I gave a few different details. Our different screens, user registration form, user login form, etc. Okay. But I will go ahead and send this to you as well. Not that you have to do this. This is just an option. And I know a lot of students last semester, especially in the .NET, the more advanced one, the second year course, the extension database-driven 2.1, the other database-driven one. I know that they started using this and they produce some pretty good looking sites. I'm not an expert in this. I've actually, I would classify myself as a beginner using this. This tool. So, you can go ahead and try some different things yourself. Okay. I was just trying to get some things really basic. I do suggest that you try not to, if you just put in some general information, it will create a bunch of things and different technologies that probably is not best. Because, we kind of have our technology stack set for, being basically React and Express and Bootstrap, and not other technologies such as TypeScript or others as well. So kind of wanted to limit that, and that's why I put some limitations on that. But basically come in here and go ahead and it's kind of hard to see the chat window here. It's hard to see sometimes for me how it does. It doesn't really have it where it's noticeable where to put the chat, but right after what can I help you build is the chat box. And then I went ahead and added that. And I'm going to go ahead and click the arrow here. And it's going to go ahead and spend some time going through this. And it's going to tell you what it's going to do here. And it's going to go ahead and create some files. Okay, it's going to create some Bootstrap files. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video while that's doing that. Okay. Okay, and it takes a few minutes for that to run through there. Probably depends on how much traffic, what's all going on, how many people are using the app at the same time. But here's some files it created. Not necessarily going to use them all, like there's a dashboard here. I mean, some things look really nice. It all depends on how much time you want to spend putting it together, okay? And for this lab, I wouldn't do too much, but that's up to you, okay? So it's got a register, it's got this dashboard, it has some nice looking things, okay? But it's going to take some time. And just for this lab, just kind of wanted to do something really basic. I'm going to come back later and make it, much fancier, much more advanced. I encourage you to do so. But for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and do some little bit of basics here. So we've got let's see, got that. That really doesn't have a register here. Create an account. Sometimes it might miss something. I think it missed the login. That's kind of interesting. But you can do a follow-up on that. Let's see what I put on here for the login. So what I think I'm going to do here is like follow-up. Please create user login form, email, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, let's see what it has here. Does it have a preview of that? I don't know why it doesn't now. But here's a login form with our fields. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to grab just some of this. It does create it differently all the time. So you kind of have to be careful with that. All right, let's see how this turns out. So in here on this login, we have this return there. What I'm going to do on this is within the return here, want some space here. We're going to do need to make sure we do that. So some things you'll have to be careful about. So typically, whenever we wrote HTML, we use certain attributes like class, and then also for like labels and that we used for. Well, when we're using like a JSX file, which is basically JavaScript, when we're using that the JXX file, we cannot use, because they're reserved words, class and for. So what we have to do is go ahead and whatever tool you're using, if for some reason you've got class or you're also for, you're going to need to make a change. And when I say for, it was a for with the label. Okay, you'll have to make some changes to this. And so what you can do here is this. Just hit Control F, and then do here, and you're going to want to do a find and replace. So basically, you can do class and replace it with class name. Make sure this N is capitalized, class name, and this is the correct way to do it for a React app. Okay, and there's 32 of them. Usually for something like this, it all depends on maybe what other text is in here. Usually going to be safe changing class to class name. And sometimes maybe you could do something just to make sure. Put that equal sign in just in case you had something else named, something like that. Obviously just found 32 of these, so we're going to go ahead and click replace all. It's going to replace them. And just for you to see here real quick, I think I'm just going to save this, and we're going to, let's see what happens here if I try, I expect an error here. Let's see. Okay, well, it didn't. but I want to show you, how to check things. Well, basically, if you have an error, it's going to tell you right here. Okay, it's complaining. Let's see what it's complaining about in here. Let's see, expected closing tag for input. Yeah. Okay, so you have to do a little things a little different because it's much more strict React. So for any input field, okay, you're going to have to do an N1. So what you can just do here is just do this, okay, for each input field. All right. And I'm just going to do that one for each one all the way through. And we're going to do that one there. Now for this HR, what you're going to need to do this, the HR, if you recall, is horizontal rule. So same thing there. You just want to end that as well. And that's, basically what I have in this. You may create some Bootstrap code that's going to be it's going to probably be different no matter how you're doing it. I'm using that Vercel one. You can use whatever. Like I said, you could get them from other sources as well, whatever Bootstrap you want to use. Okay, so I did all of that. Let's see what else we have here. I think this might be an extra one here. Sometimes you got to clean up things a little bit. Let's see if I can save this now. That looks pretty good. It is complaining about this, okay? But it's basically because you haven't used it, right? It's declared but never used. Let's see what happens if I... sometimes you do have to kind of do some restarts a little bit. So I'm going to restart the server here. Let me see what we got now. Okay. So one thing is, probably haven't done this much in a while, but, you definitely want to go ahead and use the developer tools. So I'm going to do an F12 here. And it's just telling me no routes match location. Okay. All right. So that looks okay. So I want to show you something else I did. And I'll go ahead and send you this code, but I'll send you it complete. So what I was wanting to do is, it doesn't ask you to do this in the lab, but this way you can actually access the different pages just by changing the URL, okay? Eventually we'll have navigation. We'll just click on a link. It'll go there, but we will define it in here as well. But this is kind of just an easier, quicker way to do it, okay? So that when we go ahead and do this, it'll go to the correct page, okay? So for this page, you want to go ahead and make sure you import these. Links not necessary because they're not using it, but you can leave it there. It will eventually. But you want to go ahead and do this import like here, right? And then you want to make sure you do an install. Use an install on this. npm install reactrouter.dom. Okay. And as you can see, I have an import of my login form. But what I'm going to go ahead and do here, and this isn't asked by the lab, but I'm just going to create a home page. All right, a homepage.jsx. And in here, I'm going to go ahead and just going to create a basic function here in this one. Welcome to the bug tracker. Okay. And then what I want to do in here, in the back to app.jx, I want to import this one as well. Okay. I want to import homepage, just like that. Okay. And in here, I might accept that. Let's see how that looks. I didn't want to really do the link, but let me not do that. I'm just going to do another route path here. Real quick. Okay, let's see. What did I call mine? Home page. Okay. So I'm going to just do another route path for that one. Okay. So I have this home page, and that's going to be at the root, right? Just /. So now if I go back to the page, got a little too many pages up and running, I think. If I go back to this page, just the root, now it's going to come to Welcome Bug Tracker, okay? And then if I go ahead and change this to /login, okay, now it's going to go to this login screen, okay? You don't have to have it exactly like that, okay? You just need to follow the basic requirements that's in that lab, okay? But this is just one option, right? The important thing is have your email address and password, right? And be able to log in. So let's look at the lab again real quick here. So what it's asking you to do is, obviously it contains a field email and password, a submit button, a link to the register screen as well. We want to store the state, so we want to use useState, okay? And then we want to call an event handler when the user successfully logs in, okay? So let's go back to our code here. And let's go back into the login form. So it's the reason it's red, it's highlighting because these things aren't set, okay? I have this useState for the email and a password. You know, obviously it's important to import the useState first, okay? And so what we're going to do is basically where we're setting these down here, we want to set these states when we set it on this form, right? This is a form, our login form, right? On our input field for our email, we want to do an on change event. Okay, just like that, on change, and what we're doing is E stands for event. So on change the event, and basically the event is when something happens with this input field. The event is the changing of this field, okay? And so what we're going to do is we want to do set email, and we want to send it the event. E is for event. We could change the name of E to event and have event.target.value. And okay, but it's going to go ahead and set this email, okay? It's going to set this email to the value that gets changed, okay? And so it will set this email right here, okay? And then the next one we want to do is we want to do the same thing for the password here. Okay, so the password. So we want to do the same thing on change. We're going to set the password, right? So make sure you don't do, if you're doing any cut and pasting, make sure you have the correct name. This one's for the password, this one's for the email up here. So now we have those being set. Okay. So that basically takes care of that first part of that lab where it's telling you to save the state, right? And then the next one is handle submit. Now this handle submit's not really doing much of anything, okay? Now event.prevent default, what that's going to do is stop the form from being submitted. And we want to do that because we're going to do other things in here. We're not necessarily doing much of anything now, right? But, you know, we're just developing and testing. And during development, you don't want to be hitting submit button. It's not doing you any good at this point. You know, you only want it to submit when, you know, you have everything in place and working, so it's relevant, right? So the prevent default is going to prevent it from submitting, okay? Later, we're going to have a whole lot more code in here that we're going to do some validation checks. We're going to do some different things, and then we're going to go ahead and submit the form, okay? For now, we're just doing prevent default, and here looks like we're printing out something, so we're going to print that. And let's do another console here. Password, just like that. That looks good. I'm happy with that. I'm going to save that. So we've got our email and our password, but we haven't used this anywhere yet. Okay. So where we're going to do this is on our form. So we need to go down here and find our form tag for login. There's our login form. So on our form, here we're going to look, make sure, okay, handle submit. So what we want to do here on our form is let's go ahead and do it like this. On submit equals handle submit. Okay, so this is going to call this function on a submit. So let's save this. Everything looks much better in here now. It's happy. You know, sometimes it does within Visual Studio Code complain about things if you don't use it. It's not really an error, but you know, it's kind of more of a warning type thing. But since we kind of added everything, you know, if I comment this out just because it's not referencing it, it's going to complain, right? Not that it's really an error. But save this. Everything looks good here. So let's go ahead and go to our form now. And sometimes just every once in a while, especially if things don't seem to work right, I would stop your server. Sometimes it can be a problem. But for the most part, it shouldn't be. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this back up. And where are we going? So here's our issue tracker. This is the main screen, right? Because this is going to be just our slash. Basically that, right? And that's going to go there. But if we go ahead and do a slash login, and now we go to our login page, we put an email address. I have some stuff saved here. So we're just going to go ahead and use that one. And I'm going to click login. Login should call the submit, the form submit. Okay. And we have prevent, so anything didn't happen. But if we go ahead and do an F12 here, we come in here, you will see, looks like I might not have done that right. We'll have to go look at that. But as you can see, I did have the log message to the console. There's the email and password. Obviously, in the real world, you don't really want to be printing out the password in the log file, but, you know, just for our purposes, that's fine. So, yeah, looks like I didn't, did you mean HTML4? Yeah, I think I did that wrong. Let's go fix that in the code. So here's our login form. I'm not sure what it was complaining about. Oh, yeah. So let's go look at that one more time, make sure. F12 here. Yeah, HTML. Did you mean HTML4? Yes. And it has to be camel case as well. So if I change that to HTML, capital F4, save that. We go back to our screen here. And sometimes you need to refresh this. Let's do another F12. And this is where sometimes, and I'm not quite sure, I don't remember it always working like this, but I think the reason, well, let me make sure there's not another one in there. There might be another one in there. Yeah, there is. All right, so that needs to be like this one, this label. That looks good. I'm going to save this, and we'll get back here. I know I was doing something earlier, and no matter what I did, it still had this in here. Login form, line 48. So let's see, login form 48. All right, so maybe it's just me here. Okay, it's basically all the labels. Let's just search for label. Okay, so that HTML4 for that one, HTML4 for that one, and HTML4 for that one. All right, let's save that. Go back here. If I hit refresh, let's see what happens. Yeah, took care of that. Okay, that looks clean. So this is going to be, especially you have some problems or screen's not coming up. That's kind of one of the first things you want to do is hit F12, see if you have any errors. And then obviously if you enter the data here, if you put a console.log file, console.log, it will go ahead and print that out. And ours are on the handler for the submit, right? So that kind of takes care of that one. So just kind of to review what we did here on this. In the login.form, we went ahead and made sure we did the import of the use state. Okay. You have to create your state variables, which is email and password, just like this. Always remember, you never want to just set this. You always want to call set email because that's how React works under the hood. The only way it's going to know that it changed and to re-render the screen and everything is you need to use these sets, right? In this case, set email and set password. And then we also created a function called handle submit, passing in the event. We make sure we do a prevent default so we don't actually submit it. And here we're just doing a couple console.log files. So the console.log is not going to go within your terminal down here at the bottom here. It's only going to go within the browser, right? And then in here, what we did do is, and you got to watch, make sure that you have your divs matching and everything. But the other thing is, by default, an HTML document is HTML is going to have class. And the reason we can't use the word class or for is because they're reserved words in JavaScript. So anywhere we have class, we have to change it to class name. And remember, the end's always going to be capitalized here. So we have to change all of those. And then also we have to change, for a label has a for, we have to have it as HTML4 with the F being uppercase. So we did all of that. And then we also, what we did is we added our on-change event to email and password. We added our change event. I can make this put a space there. So we have an on-change event to basically set our state for email. Set email, and then we pass it e.target.value. It all depends on what you call it here, right? You call this whatever you want here, event. E is kind of shortcut for that, but you could call it event. You call it something else, but it's based to have something that's relevant to what it is. So we did that on the email. We did that on the password. And then we also on the form itself, which is up higher here, right? On the form itself, we did an on submit and called this handle submit. Okay. And let's see, what else did we do in app.jx? Now, you don't have to do this, but it's a way for you to see your forms. You can change the URL. I went ahead and added these routes here. So I got one, and I went ahead and created a quick little home page here, just so it's there, because by default it's always expecting you to have the way it's going to complain on the route when you do that route stuff. If you don't have a /, because this is kind of the home page, that's what you do by default. So there's / is going to the home page, and then if you put in login, it's going to go to login form, and then we want to kind of do the same thing for all of ours, right? So we're going to have register form, bug list form, etc. Okay. What else did we do in here? We also had to do a npm install on React Router DOM. And then we had to make sure that we import the login form. Whatever you're referencing here needs to be imported. So we're importing both of them from the components directory. Okay. So I'm going to go through one more. I'm going to go through a bug one. probably the bug list form, because the other requirements kind of have some fake data. We're not going to be connecting this to the API. So we're just kind of using a little bit of fake data right now. Okay, and now I want to go ahead and create a new file, calling this bug list. And that's going to be another JXX file. All right. And in here, so I'm going to create this function for that. And in here, I'm going to create a bug array. If you've already got something created from before, you know, early on, we created some fake data, whatever works for you. But I'm just going to define this at the beginning. And then from there, okay, so I just cut and paste what I had from before. So here, once again, you'll have to change, if this has class, you're going to have to change that to class name. Any place it has a label, you'll need to change the for to, I don't think in this one it does. You'll have to change it to HTML4. But what I am also doing here on this one is I have a bug array created, right? So if we look at the top here, I have this bug array. Let me go to the top. Bug array. So down here, I'm using this to bug array just to print this out. So in the T body here, okay, I've got a bug array. I'm doing a map, bug, and index. And I'm getting the title, description, and really should be getting the steps to reproduce as well. I don't think that my bug had all three of those, just had title, description. But if you can also do steps to reproduce. So basically, this will just loop through this bug array and go ahead and put these values in here. One other thing I did want to mention is if you have any style tags, you're going to have to rewrite them to be like this. You'll have to use the curly braces. You'll have to remove, generally a style tag has the quotes around it and that. So there's kind of a little different format for that as well. So just keep that in mind. If for some reason you have any style tags, you'll have to correct them as well. Okay. So in here, now we have this bug list. Everything looks good. Looks like it's happy. I want to go ahead and go to this app.jx and add the one for bug list now. We don't want to do that one. We want to do maybe just do bug list, all lowercase, whatever. That's fine. Okay, bug list. We have to make sure we import it up here, right? Make sure you import your bug list. We're using it like that. I don't know why it's complaining, probably because the unknown word. That's fine. Okay, so we got that. And now if I go ahead and go back to our screen here, I should be able to just go bug list here. And there's our bug list. And there's all our bugs. This was part of what was already in there. And this don't have to be perfect. This is kind of just our first iteration, our first try. The important thing is, you know, to get a screen up and just kind of working. Make sure that you, where relevant. For this one, I think was a little different. You're not using use state for these. So you'll have to, you're not, you know, setting the state. Let's go look at the, let's go this one here. So for the bug list, just displays a list of bugs, allows the user to open the bug editor. I didn't include that as well. So you will need to. So what you do is you'll have a link on that, and so that it will go to the bug editor. Okay, it'll have a link to the bug editor. Let's go look at our screens for a minute. So it should be the login and the register should be, let me see here, register here. So, okay, so this is trying to go to, and this was just because this was put in here. We just did a cut and paste from Vercel and what it created. So it's trying to go here, but if we can change that, so it just does that. Let's go take a look. Well, that didn't work either, but let's go ahead and let's take a look at that real quick. Oh, we don't have a register. I only did a login, that's why. Okay, forget that. I forgot. We only had login and the bug list. But if you go ahead and change, I'll just show you what you should change. What you will need to change for that. So if we're in, let's go to login. So let's just say we did have a register. Okay, let's just say we did have a register. Let's go down to where there's a link. Register here. You can just get rid of this. That's all you need to do. Okay? Even though it doesn't exist, here, let's just do this just for fun. Let's just change this to bug list. So this is the login form. I'm going to save that. Let me go back to that page. And obviously we don't have that. Let's just go back to the home. We're good there. Go to login. If I click this now, register here, it goes to the bug list. Okay, so that's all you have to do. So when you're on this bug list, you could have a little button here for the edit, to go to individual bug, right? And instead of having an array of bugs, you can just pass in one bug, all right? We're doing the array of bugs for the list, but for the individual one, you just have one of them, right? One bug. But that's how you can tie these pages together. There's another way. When we do some more advanced stuff, there's other ways as well. But this is just a quick and dirty way. So that's what you kind of want to get done here for these. It's really not too bad. Sometimes it's just getting everything lined up and working because of the class name, because of the HTML4 on the labels, and making sure that you got a div tag that has an end tag, right? Things like that. But, I think if you pretty much followed what we did in that login and that bug list one, that should help you get pretty far along, okay? But you'll have to do it for all these other ones as well, right? What I will also send you is I'll send you just the whole list of what I did from that navigation. Not really the navigation, but the routes. So let me go back to that. I'll send you my complete one that I have, just to make that simple. And if you call things different, you're just going to have to, realize that you called things different, right? I might have to make some updates, some changes for that. So I'll send you that. I'll send you the Vercel thing. You don't necessarily have to use that. To tell you the truth, it can kind of, it's come sometimes a little bit of a challenge. And every time you do, you have to only grab the right things. You can't grab all that HTML out of there. So, maybe there's other ways if you want to use ChatGPT, Google Gemini or whatever, just to create little chunks of code for each page. That's fine as well. Or if you want to go out to some of the Bootstrap template stuff to grab that, that's fine. So lots of options on that. If you could spend the time on this Vercel stuff, it does create some really some really nice stuff, but you know, it's really beyond the scope of this lab, and I didn't want to get too far involved in that because it can be like if you look at, let's say, let's preview this one. I don't know why these previews don't always work here, but I guess maybe it's beyond that point or something. Um, let's see what we have here on the bug list. I mean, this is a nice looking screen here, right? This is a nice looking screen. Um, and if you can get the time later on, I wouldn't do it right now. Um, you know, but coming up, you know, this is part of what a lot of what we'll do as far as between now and the whole next month, right? So, you know, you'll probably have to replace some things, but you know, this is a beautiful screen here, right? But you know, it's going to take a lot of work to get to that, right? It's going to take a lot of work to get to that. So, a little bit out of the scope for this lab. I don't want you to get stuck on trying to go too far advanced. Okay, really was meant to, you know, some of these labs and stuff, you know, were kind of designed before a lot of this AI stuff is, you know, this AI stuff is really accelerating. So a lot of this wasn't around then, but this is a very nice looking screen here. I really like this. But what I did is just grab pieces of it just to have something, and maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you could just use ChatGPT or Gemini, create a basic little bootstrap thing. You could write it yourself too. It wouldn't really take that much. Okay, but if you want to kind of go ahead and later on come up with something a little more extravagant, a little more complex, you can do this as well. Okay, so please don't get too caught up in this. Okay, you know, the thing is just really create some of those basic screens, make sure they work, make sure you're using use state and you're using the handling of the submit, and you know that's about it. Just try to get some basic screens up and running. Okay. So that's all I have. Please let me know if you have any questions, and have a good day.